U.S. President Joe Biden signed half a dozen executive orders on Wednesday, reversing several of former President Donald Trump's hardline immigration policies.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator, there is a very significant...
Yes or no question?
There's a very significant...
Is there a crisis?
Senator, there's a very significant challenge.
I think your microphone is not on. Okay, so you're refusing to answer. Well, Secretary Mayorkas, I'll tell you someone who is willing to answer, which is your and President Biden's chief of the Border Patrol in a sworn deposition in July of 2022 when asked, would you agree, Chief Ortiz, that the southern border is currently in crisis? Answer, yes. Notice none of those wiggle words, none of that equivocation. One word, one syllable, yes. Are you willing to speak with the same clarity as Chief Ortiz? Is there a crisis at our southern border, yes or no?
Senator, I'm very proud to work alongside.
So you refuse to answer. Let me ask you the next question. Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe, yes or no?
Senator, we are dedicated to the safety.
Has the crisis made Americans less safe? I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question. Mr. Secretary, let me show you how someone doing his job answers a question in a straightforward manner. Chief Ortiz, is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike? Answer, yes. One word, one syllable, 3 letters. That's how someone answers a question and does their job. You're being a politician misleading the American people. How many migrants have died under President Biden?
Senator, your phrasing of the question is actually quite misleading.
How many migrants died in 2022?
Children and a woman drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande.
This nation, they're averaging a drowning per day.
Precisely why we are seeking to...
So you know the answer? Do you know how many died?
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died. 853. 853. And by the way, here are the numbers that have died every year. You go back to 1998, you see it's consistently between 300 and 400, 300, 400, 300, 400. Suddenly, 2021, what happens? You get in office, and that red line are dead bodies. I've been on the Rio Grande, and I've seen dead bodies floating there who've drowned. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted...
I don't want to lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration? Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. Let's move on. It's obvious you've been instructed to stonewall. Quote, this problem didn't start under Biden. Look, I get if you're a partisan spinner, you got to figure out something to say about the absolute catastrophe that has played out under the Biden administration. And in fact, if you look at illegal immigration, let's look at CBP encounters. You can see 500,000, it drops to the lowest level, and boom, what happens? You show up. And that red line is you. That red line is Joe Biden. So your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million. Is that your testimony?
Senator, you're not allowing me to answer your question.
I am allowing you to answer. I'm not allowing you to filibuster. Let's move on to gotaways. Gotaways are the people that get away that you know about. Now, what happened under your administration? Gotaways consistently down at this low line, boom, you get in. And they go from below 180,000 to 600,000. How many of those are murderers?
That is precisely
So you refuse to answer the question. You know how many are rapists?
Senator, this is why
the answer is no. Let me ask you this. Do you know how many of them are terrorists? And I don't want to, Senator, here's my lecture on this. Do you know how many of the 600,000 gotaways were terrorists? Yes or no?
Senator, we are focused on...
You refuse to answer that as well. What are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your job, because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing. Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator, we are taking it to the cartel.
How many children have been sold into sex slavery?
In an
Do you know how many children have been sold into sex slavery?
To an unprecedented degree.
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now, your behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis, it's a disgrace, and you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
Claiming 1 minute chairman time, Mr. Secretary, would you like to respond to any of those questions?
What the senator said was revolting. I'm not going to address it.
Your refusal to do your job is revolting.
If you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
Soon.
I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.